Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pain Free Comeback channel. We have another amazing guest and recovery story for you today. Edel, who is joining us all the way from Ireland, who has a really incredible story about overcoming chronic fatigue to share. Edel, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here with you, Alec, always.
It's always a joy when we connect. And I know we've been wanting to do this for a few months, and I was reflecting on the shifts that you had made over the course of your recovery and how one of the things that you talked about learning to do was set boundaries and say no. And the fact that it took us a few months to record this. Like you were off on holiday and writing your book, and part of me was like, oh, I want to record this with Adele. But then, like, as your coach, I was like, heck yeah, like this is what she's supposed to be doing. Say no, like listen to her in her voice. So I'm just really glad that we're able to be here and do this together.
Rich. Richie.
Yeah. So, for those who are watching, Edel has is a really powerful story to share about overcoming chronic fatigue. And what I love about her journey is that she's really used this not as a way to go back to her old life, but to use it in a way to help other people in a both a personal and a professional context. Her company is essentially her work is about doing this, helping leaders who are avoid burnout, get out of burnout, and I love the way that you've built this into the professional life that you have. And so, um, for those who are watching, just kind of a high level overview of where we're going today with Edel's journey. So, Edel had a chronic fatigue crash in 2016, and she had made we can call it a partial recovery. Is that fair to say?
War.
Yeah. And we had met in London in 2020, end of 2023. Yeah. And um, at that point, she was, I'd say, high functioning, but also had, in her words, stagnant health for the past couple of years, needing to build in rest days, was running nonstop quite often, and wasn't able to do some of the physical things that she loved to do. And by the end of our journey together, what she was doing was incredible. She, running a 5K without symptoms, and all these interchanges started to unfold as well, being more attuned to her emotional life, asking for help, shedding responsibility, setting boundaries, saying no. And so this is, I think, a really special recovery story in not just a capped ceiling with chronic fatigue, which with so many people who say, like, I was able to get back to, some level of activity, but not where I wanted to be. Adele's recovery is off the charts. So, Adele, thanks again for being here. Did I leave anything out?
No, I felt a little shift of pride there when you were talking about all those things because I kind of went, yeah, I did get there with your help. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. And as we were talking about before we started this, you said a lot of these things have just kind of become unconscious. Like you're doing it
Mm,
naturally, which is, the whole idea, right? These shifts just become automatic after a while.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to take us back to the beginning, like before you had your crash. Um, who were you like? What were you up to? Um, Give us a little sense of who Adele was at that point.
Yeah, I was thinking it's kind of who I thought I was, maybe in some respects, but how I was living my life and who I thought I was. Um, I was this very high energy person, the person that would be, lifting everybody in the room, real natural leader. I was very ambitious, very driven. So I always had in my head, if I put my mind to something, I can do it. Like, and I
Mm,
just lived my life that way. But I was always in a good mood, really positive person, like super, super positive. Woke up every day feeling positive. There was no bad months. So in terms of from a work capacity, I had just landed a job that I really, really wanted. I got to director of strategy level, and it was a job that I was working with a team I really liked. There was a lot of purpose in my job. I felt like probably a lot of purpose always. I was very passionate about my work, no matter
mm,
what I did. From my very first job, I was always passionate and I just loved getting involved in projects. And I mean, I was just like your dream client. And I applied that kind of principle to everything in life. I actually like I used to use that phrase all the time. I'll give it 110%. That was like my
Mm.
catchphrase, you know. And I used to say it in job interviews, and because I meant it. It's like I kind of said like that was my closing line in job interviews because I meant it, and I did try to give 110% to everything. Um, but funnily, like, I think when people think about chronic fatigue or burnout or whatever, they think, oh, she was probably working crazy hours. Like I always had this sense that I wanted to live a good life. I lost somebody close to me, when he was 50. And I kind of took away from that. I'm going to live my life. But the problem
Yeah.
was I was living my life at 110%. At every side, there was no rest at all. It was all drive. And even when I was doing activity with family and friends, it was high, high energy. I was high energy. It's kind of like my brand. But I didn't work
Mm.
late hours. I was very vigilant about finishing, well, relatively early. At that level, certainly. I was leaving before everyone else was. So I
Yeah.
thought I had balance. But to me, back then, balance meant, finishing work at 6, chasing straight to the gym, doing my work in the
Mm.
gym, coming home, making a really healthy dinner, going to bed, getting up the next morning, getting to work, being really positive. So my life was like that all the time. I kind of, when I look back now, I describe it as all push, no pause. I didn't see that at the time. I thought I was really happy. I was very happy and happily living on adrenaline, I would say is what it was.
Yeah.
Looking back.
It's such an interesting thing you bring up because on the outside, a lot of people would probably look at you and say, she's waking up happy. She's positive. She has all this energy. She's doing work that she really enjoys and she's really engrossed in it and driven in it. Um, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And I think it's just so common for us to say, like, all right, we see this external veneer on Instagram or wherever, or LinkedIn of how people are living, but there's other stuff that's going on underneath the surface that we might not be aware of.
Yeah. And I think honestly, at that time, I wasn't even aware of it. So
Mm.
I think it's quite a complex one because I wasn't aware of what was going on. Like now that I look back, I see it in a totally different lens. But as I was living
Mm.
it, I just thought I was living the life. Like I thought I was living the life. I thought I was putting every ounce of my energy into living life and making work fabulous, trying to make work fabulous for everybody else, trying to make, life fabulous for everybody, trying to bring everybody on this journey of positivity with me was a big part of it as well. It was like
Yeah.
my brand. So when I came into the room, I expected the room to light up with me. And if it didn't, I kind of used all my energy to make sure that it did. I
Mm.
didn't think of that consciously. This is me looking back, kind of
Right.
seeing myself in that vein. So it's different as I look in the rearview mirror than it was when I was in it.
Absolutely. And when did you start to feel that something might be off, like that this like something feels unsustainable here?
I honestly, this is the funny part, and I don't think everybody experiences chronic fatigue like this, but for me, in my mind, it happened like overnight. Like that's what
Mm.
I thought. I just went into
Mm.
work, and how I told the story like initially was I just went into work one day, the same positive vein that I always did. Had my little green juice up to my desk early. We had an everyday meeting, or I think that I might have even set up. It was like a stand-up meeting with the leadership team. I went out to that as normal and standing up just to give a quick update and just felt a little bit dizzy, felt the room just spin a little bit. And I just stood to one side and I can only describe the next bit as like someone just pulled the plug, like a robot when they pull the plug and the robot just powers down. So I just collapsed, but I was still completely alert and awake, but my eyes were closed. People thought I fainted. So I felt the energy just drain on my body. And I was lying on the ground, could hear everything that was going on around me. But I was just paralyzed. So I could hear them saying, call the ambulance. And I was desperately trying to tell them to stop, that I didn't want didn't want anybody fussing. Um, and that was it. I eventually kind of managed to say something and I just said, I'm fine, don't call an ambulance. I'm still lying on the ground, paralyzed, like, and trying to stop people. I didn't want anybody's help. I don't need help.
'Cause you're the
So
person who gives the help. You're not the
yes,
person who
so
receives it.
I'm
Yeah,
strong, like, I'm strong, I don't
right.
need help. So I was rushed off in the ambulance, and that's where the story kind of starts, and we can talk about the symptoms and everything then, but in my mind, that came out of nowhere. Now,
Mm,
again, with the rear view mirror, there were all these symptoms that I had ignored for years and years and years and years and years. And it's only now, and even doing the work with you, that you really made me go back further, much, much further, that I realized, wow, my body or my brain had been telling me to slow down for years and I wasn't listening. But if
mm,
you asked me back then, what were the signs? I didn't see any signs. In my mind, it just happened, bang, it just collapsed and that was it. Um, and it was only when I was really forced to stop that I did, you know. So
yeah. I'm
yeah, worked
curious
here at the time.
to jump in there. One of the things that this journey is about is this one of awareness, and I think you described that so beautifully of when I was in it, I didn't have this awareness of how my brain was telling me to slow down. Now looking back, it was obvious.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, like, what were some of those signs that you saw, like, in hindsight, like, "Oh, this is a giant red flag."
Yeah. I mean, in the weeks before, I know, maybe months, 2 or 3 months before I went on a holiday with my husband, and I mean, I could not sit still. Like, he'll tell me now that I drove him crazy because my brain had almost got to this point where it is just wired. So I couldn't sit
Mm,
at the pool, I couldn't read a book, I couldn't relax at all really, and that had gotten worse, I'd say, over time. So I thought it was like I'd be jumping up to go for a run while he was lying by the pool reading a book. And I was like, oh, I need to keep moving. You know, I don't like to rest. I don't like not to be busy. And that's obviously a
mm,
state of mind. I definitely was getting headaches the few months before it happened. I was putting it down to my glasses. I was fobbing it off on X, Y, and Z. So that was kind of in the immediate weeks up to when it happened. But when I really looked back, I can really try to track it as far back as 15 years before that. Or if there was stuff even before that again, I used to get like these
right.
skin rashes that were, you know, they were never resolved. They would never show up anything on blood tests. My very first
Mm,
job, I used to get that and they'd just go away mysteriously by themselves. I never questioned that.
mm,
And then about 15 years before that, like, I don't know what if you might call it a mini burnout, where I just went into work one day and same type of thing, the energy just drained at my desk, out of my body, and I started crying, which wouldn't have been me at all. And my
mm,
boss came over and asked if I was okay. I couldn't even speak. She had to bring me
mm,
home, put me to bed, and literally leave me in my apartment. So I slept for 3 days. I woke up, got bloods done, nothing showed up. I went back to work. And then that cycle happened. That happened 3 times. So it happened again another 2 years later. And instead of going to the doctor, I just said it must be my job. You know, I blamed the job as opposed to me, even though I really loved that job. Um,
mm,
and so I moved job. And then 2 year, maybe a year later, the same thing happened again. And I thought, oh dear, it's not the job. It's something. But I never questioned it. I just actually
right.
text my boss and said, okay, I'll explain when I get in, but I'm going to have to take 3 days of rest and I'll explain why this is something that just happens to me. So I
Mm,
never, and you know, when I went to GPs, they don't question it because your bloods show up fine. So I never
right.
questioned it. So I just kept moving on and on and on. So look, I heard somebody saying once, like, it's like thunder. You hear the thunder before the storm really hits. And there was so much thunder going on with me that I just ignored. And you look back and you think, how could you have let that keep going on? You know, and I did, and people do. We just ignore these little voices in our head. You know.
Yeah, it's scary
Mm.
to listen to them sometimes, and based on how we show up, our identity, like, you've shared so much about how your identity was the person who lifts everybody else's energy up, who's there for
Mm.
others, saving others, and so it's not just, "Oh, I'm gonna take some time for me," it's like, "Whoa, this is a huge threat to how I see myself and how other people see me."
Completely, yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump back to this episode that you experience at work. You faint, you're taken away in the ambulance. What happens in the immediate aftermath of that?
So immediately went to get checked out, and you know they did the basic tests and they said, yeah, look, there's nothing. This is just a blip. There must have been a blip in your blood pressure. Everything's
Mm.
fine. I went home and slept for 3 days. That was my
Yeah.
go-to 3 days of sleep. So I slept for 3 days. I went back to work, and in fairness, my boss was trying to encourage me to get more tests done. And I obviously didn't look very well, but I was insisting on working through it. And I had terrible headaches in those 2 weeks, I think. I kept saying, look, I'll just make it to the weekend and then I'll sleep. This is obviously just sleep. I need to sleep.
Mm.
So that went on for 2 weeks. And then I got a call from my GP who I'd had a brain scan in the meantime, just in case. And she rang me, and I kind of was in the corridor and she rang me and she just said, Edel, you have to go to A&E immediately. They think it's MS, right? Multiple sclerosis.
Mm.
So whatever happened in that moment, like, whatever was left in my energy resources just drained and it's gone. Like I went into the CEO's office and I just collapsed on the chair. I started crying, and I
Mm.
just, whatever was left in me just went. And the shock just kind of, just I could feel it. It was just immediate. So he rang my husband to pick me up, and my car never left the car park in work for 4 months. Like I never got back. Never, my desk, everything was just left as it was. So at that point, I went to A&E. They ruled out MS almost straight away, but they kept me in then for like more tests, and things just went downhill, like in terms of my health. So almost immediately, I couldn't. I would say like a full body and brain shut down. So
Mm.
that was at the point, like, to just give some examples, get up in the morning. I forced myself up in the morning and I would get dressed. I couldn't have a shower. I couldn't shower in the mornings. My energy levels were so low. So I'd try and get dressed, then I'd have to lie down for 15 minutes just to after getting dressed, get to the next stage, have breakfast, lie down. The whole day was just used up like that. Every tiny bit of energy had to be replaced with a rest.
Mm.
And then in terms of my brain, like, I couldn't remember anything. My cognitive function was gone. I couldn't read. If I read one sentence of a book, I would lose my train of thought and I'd have to go back.
Mm.
And I couldn't have a conversation. Like, having a conversation with you like this would have been excruciating, or any conversation, because
Mm.
it took such concentration. I remember looking at people's lips going, what are they saying? I couldn't
Right.
concentrate on the voice and the movement of their lips. It was so strange. So that's how it kind of transpired. And at the time, well, still in Ireland, chronic fatigue there's very little support around it. My GP really didn't. Nobody mentioned chronic fatigue, by the way. That's not a
Right.
diagnosis until 6 months. So I didn't. I'd
Right.
never heard of chronic fatigue. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I assumed it was neurological. And to
Right.
get an appointment with the neurologist took 5 months. So all that time, I thought there's something wrong with my brain. Um, so
Mm.
the health continued, and I just kept pushing. I kept trying to push through it. So every day I'd get up and I'd make these little schedules for myself. Get better schedule for
Mm.
itself. 15 minutes on the computer, and then I would like try and build myself up, or walk up and down the hall 3 times. Or so I just kept trying to push through it and convince myself that I'm going to get better. What I didn't know then, that I know now, is chronic fatigue has this cycle of, like, you'll crash. Even when you're in it, like, you have this crash and pull cycle. So you might have a good day, might even have 2 good days. So I'm thinking, I'm better, I'm cured, I
Mhm.
text work, I'll be back next week, I'm fine. And then you'll have this, because what we do is, as is natural, we use up all that energy. Like, we push in those 2 days, because that's the way
Right.
I was wired,
Right.
certainly.
Right.
So then you'll have a crash and you go, it'll be probably worse. Every time you push, you crash even worse. So this kind of push crash was like a yo-yo, and I didn't know what was going on. And there was honestly, like, my GP was of absolutely no support, lovely person, but did not understand and couldn't help me. And I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't Google chronic fatigue. And even
Right.
burnout in 2016, certainly in Ireland, it was unheard of. So I wasn't even thinking
Right.
this is burnout. I didn't know what it was. So that went on for the full 6 months, until eventually, at that point, they just say this is chronic fatigue. And it's really just telling
Mhm.
the people, like, because now we don't know what's wrong with you, but it's 6 months
Yeah.
of fatigue. So it's chronic fatigue. And I remember, like, I was with an endocrinologist, and he just said, "Edel, they're going to tell you this is chronic fatigue now, which that basically means you need to take charge of this yourself. You're on your own." He said, there's nothing here medically that's going to support you.
Mm,
So you need to figure this out yourself.
which is kind of a gift in a way, like, very probably difficult to hear in that moment, but for so many people who go through the medical system, at least in the US, and I think in general, Western medical
Yeah.
systems, it's the sense of, "You need to fix me, like, what's wrong with me?" And I think for that doctor to tell you, or the endocrinologist to tell you, "Hey, you're on your own, you're gonna have to find your own way out of this," is
Yeah.
hard, but also pretty apt, because
Yeah.
nobody can give you a pill for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, at that time, 6 months down the road, and I was still pushing. I still was pushing, and I
Yeah.
didn't know how to cure myself.
Actually, one thing I wanna quickly go back to, speaking of doctors,
Yeah.
what was really interesting in what you described was how a real crash happened after you were told you might have MS, and which is terrifying, right? To receive
Mhm.
this idea, one, because of the diagnosis, and even if the diagnosis is incorrect, it can lead this to this idea of, wow, this is actually really, really serious. And I see this all the time of people who go into the medical system, they get some sort of like fear-based messaging, like, hey, you could have MS or ALS or all sorts
Mhm.
of really scary things. And then their symptoms get so much worse immediately after. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, looking back on that, do you see any link between kind of like crashing harder and that fear that you might have a incurable neurological disease?
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely see that now. I mean, it was so immediate. Like, I was whatever level
Mm,
I was at, I still thought at that point that I was gonna get better, I suppose. I was holding on, thinking,
mm,
"Okay, I get 2 weekends. I'll figure this out." And then that was just like, "Okay, no, now there's something serious wrong here." And I think because it came from the brain scan, I had myself convinced that it's neurological as well. And immediately it was like, "You need to see a neurologist." So I
mm.
definitely had the perception in my head then that there was something really, really neurologically wrong with me. And then my symptoms were kind of, I felt matching that. So everything added up in my head and just, yeah. And I
Yeah,
wasn't
it's like
hearing any other evidence to say I wasn't.
right. It's like pouring gasoline or petrol, I guess you could say, on the fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, So then, but I suppose my saving grace, and I'll mention it because I think if there's anybody listening to this who's a leader or somebody who can support somebody else, uh, the CEO, I was still pushing. So I kept saying, I'll be back next week, back next week, back next week. Let's figure this out. So it was January time frame, I think, and he rang me up and he said, "Okay, it's like this, Ejal. I don't want to hear from you for 4 months. I don't want to hear your name in here. I don't want to hear someone got a text from you. I don't want to see you on LinkedIn. I don't want to hear anything about Edel Jordan." And he said, "And I'm going to tell you something that you don't want to hear, but it's the truth. This ship will sail without you." He said, "It
Mm,
mightn't sail as smoothly or as eloquently, but it will sail without you. We'll get where we need to go without you. And you need to understand that. It's not all reliant on you." Um, I remember coming off the phone kind of crying and feeling like, "Oh my God," and I knew what he meant as he said it, but it was still harsh to hear. But it was just the best thing that he could have ever done. And it's like, to me, the ultimate human leadership, because that's the only way I would have listened. If he tried to be
mm,
kind and compassionate, he just knew my personality at that stage wouldn't have taken that on board. I would have kept doing
mm,
what I was doing, which was like keep pushing. So he just gave me this license to step away for 4 months from work and completely remove myself from it. Like I couldn't even think about it or look at it. So it was kind of my saving grace because it stopped the push. And I kind of describe that as when I started to pause and really start to go, "Okay, take a breath here. What are we going to do?" And that's when I started exploring kind of some alternative spaces. Like I started doing counseling and everything really, acupuncture, meditation. I did a really good long meditation course and got myself fully kind of into that. Um, and that is when I started to see, like we talked about, I got myself up to a level again that was purely down to slowing down, listening, to the body.
Mhm.
I suppose without knowing it, because I didn't know anything about the body-brain connection back then, but I was doing it kind of through the work that I was doing myself, especially meditation space and counseling. And so I slowly started to build myself back up again. And there was no plan anymore. It was just day by day, day by day.
Mm.
So that's kind of how I managed to get better to the point where I was able to function again. But probably what happened then was I was still in slight push crash cycle. So they were longer. I was getting longer, but I would have these little crashes every so often, that I just started to accept as part and parcel of recovery. So,
Yeah.
and again, there's still nobody to tell me what was normal here. So I was just making it up as I went along.
What were
But yeah.
what were your thoughts about prognosis at that point? Like what you just mentioned, like there's nobody here to tell you what's possible, what's not possible. Did you think at this point you were gonna get back to where you were before? Did you think that like this is just gonna be my life for the rest of my life?
So I guess that like that is the other piece, is now I had a diagnosis, or at least I had a term, fatigue syndrome. So I was able to
Mhm.
get on Google and start looking things up and contacting the Chronic Fatigue Society. And when you start going down that road, like it wasn't very positive. So
Right.
and I even looked this up recently for something that I was writing. Like the stats on chronic fatigue, if you look them up, is that over 75% of people never get back to work. Certainly never get back to full-time work. So in my head, I was, listening to this type of, and I like, because I still had that somewhere in me, I still had that, well, I'm going to be the 25%. So I still had that bit of a
Mhm.
drive to think, okay, well, there's a chance here that I can still get past that. But like that reasoning was always in my head, like that you're never going to fully get better because it's not possible. That's what
Mm.
I was reading and hearing. And then there was cases that were a lot more severe than mine, people who never got out of bed for 4 years. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, you're doing better. Like, then you have to be
Yeah.
grateful for where you are. You have to be grateful. I kept kind of thinking that was my route out of this. Be grateful for where you are. It's never going to be, you're never going to get back to 100%. That's certainly what I told myself, because I didn't want this fear, that I'm pushing myself too much. So I kind of tried to protect myself by going, you'll never get back to 100%. You're doing really well if you could get back to some form of, working and sustaining your
Mhm.
life and all that stuff, getting the joy back. But I totally give up on that hope of ever being 100% better again, because that's just not
Mhm.
what I was reading. So yes, looking
Which
back.
is so I mean, I think I was telling you about another client that I had who was diagnosed with long COVID and chronic fatigue, and young woman, really bright, really intelligent, well connected, knows how to research. It took her 6 months to find somebody who had made a full recovery from chronic fatigue and long COVID. It's
Mm,
just the information isn't out there to say actually you can get better from this, and
yeah,
um, so it's all the more important that you're sharing your story, but
yeah,
as an aside, but it makes all the sense in the world why you would be in that place of all right, let me just be grateful for where I'm at because I the dreams maybe that I would have of getting better look like they're not going to happen.
yeah, exactly. Now I will credit, like there were one or two people which I eventually changed GP. I found a wonderful man, and again, like just this is what I call the human approach. I went into him
Mhm.
thinking this is going to be just a second opinion. I'm not going to hear anything new here. This was 2 years down the road, and I'd had a big significant relapse, and I went back to my own GP, and she said, who do you want me to refer you to? I said, how do I know? I don't have a clue.
Mm.
So somebody recommended this other GP who was heavy on the research side, and he just, his computer. I remember going into his office. Normally with your GP in Ireland, you get 10 minutes. Like so, I
Right.
went in and just told him, I just want a second opinion. I was already excusing myself to leave almost, and he turned off his screen, turned around and faced me knee to knee, and he just said, "Okay, tell me everything." And I started at the collapse, that moment from 2016, and explained from there on. And he just said, let's go back further. So very
Mm,
similar to the way you got me thinking. He was the first person who made me go back a little bit. Um, and he just brought me back and brought me back and said, he kind of just explained, at least from a chronic fatigue syndrome point of view, how I might have he explained some part of how this might have been going back a lot further than I realized. And I think he was the one who brought me down the road doing some counseling as well, just to
mm,
really start tapping into where is this coming from and where's the drive coming from and that side of
mm,
things. So I mean, I immediately came out of there. He was like, we can get this was when I wasn't even back to, let's say, the 70% that I got to before I met you. He was the one who kind of said to me, you can get through this. You will get through this. Like, and it was the first person who'd said it to
oh,
me and who I felt had listened. He connected so many things for me, and just I guess that human experience is so important with anything like this because it's a very lonely journey. And so if there's anyone out there listening to this that has chronic fatigue, just keep looking for the right person. Like, I mean, I didn't find you for a long time, Alec, but if I
mm,
had found you earlier, I'm sure things would have been different too. But whatever system you're in, like, don't settle. Just keep looking for somebody who can help you. You
yeah.
know.
What a blessing to have found somebody, especially within the medical system, who believed in you because, as you said, there's so many messages from, the doctor's medical establishment that say things can't get better, and to find somebody who says, "Edel, you're gonna get through this." Um, it's kind of like it's the, opposite of that example with MS, or that situation with MS that you shared. Like,
Yeah.
where one doctor is a fear-based message, right, is what they're sharing. This doctor is actually one that's based on hope and possibility and
Yeah.
empowerment, believing in you.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It absolutely gave me a lease of life.
Yeah. So how did things transpire after you saw that doctor?
Yeah, so I think that was like phase 2 of my recovery maybe, where I started to believe I could get to a certain place. I probably still had all that messaging around, chronic fatigue, never getting fully back. But
Mhm.
that's when I started thinking, okay, I'm gonna take control. I set up a business. I set it to work on my own, because I thought that would just give me more flexibility. Could control my own hours. And I started to kind of say, okay, you can do this, but you're in control now. So now I'm fully in
Mm,
control. And I suppose the thing that I had learned that got me through the bad days in chronic fatigue was managing your energy. So like what I literally had a piece of paper where I wrote on one side what the activity was going to be to take energy, and on the other side what would replenish it, like meditation or like by the time I was able to do a slow walk, that type of stuff. So that was kind of drilled into my head. So I started planning out my weeks like that. So from a work perspective, like, you do 1 day workshop, you take a rest day after it. You do
mhm,
whatever, coaching client in the morning, you take an hour off afterwards. You do another one in the afternoon. And so this is how I was managing my energy. And and it became the first year or two, I found it very difficult. And I still had crashes because I was constantly overthinking it.
mm,
And I would kind of almost tell clients up front that this is my situation, and they're thankfully, like, they bought into it and they were willing to work with me and support me anyway, which was
mm,
fabulous. But I had all this going on, and yeah, it got to the point. I mean, this was going on for years now. It got to the point where it was second nature. But the second nature was,
mhm,
you'll always have to make allowances. So there's certain things you can't do. There was certain things that would trigger me, like running would trigger me, or being in big groups would trigger me. Supermarkets. When I say trigger, it would
mm,
mean like my levels of exhaustion would just kick in really quickly.
mm,
And sometimes to the point where I might have to rest for a day, depending on what it was. Like, so I pre-planned for all of that. So if I had a family event, I would kind of pre-plan and say, right, I have to take a day off after that. So I was literally booking a day off work to do christening, to go to a christening of a
yeah,
big family. And part of that was because my brand was I was trying to still be on brand as Miss Congeniality or Miss Positivity. So I probably hadn't let go of that either. So I was trying so hard to sustain this kind of energy in the moments that I was with people. So that went on then for a few years up until, yeah, till I met you, I guess.
yeah.
And then phase
So
3 started.
phase 3. So share a little bit about that transition. And I'm curious, like, was there, I don't know if I've asked you this, but we were in this coaching group together, this 2-day workshop in London. And um I know I shared a little bit about what I was doing. We had a few conversations, but was there a moment where things started to click and where you said like, "Oh, maybe I can get better from this," or like what led you into this new perspective change that emerged?
Before we even like started working together.
Yeah, like when
Yeah,
we were, yeah, in
yeah,
London.
yeah. So just to explain, like, first of all, I think I had in my mind, I think I just was ready to do something. I said I had done no real travel on my own without my husband. I had huge fear because we went to Rome at one stage and I collapsed in like just outside a pub. I just, I got outside and it's same type of collapse, like not a same thing. The energy just went, and I had a huge fear of going to things without my husband with me because I felt like he was
Mm,
my safety guard. He knew what was going to happen, what needed to be done, which was just to put me to bed. I didn't need to go in my head. I didn't need to go to hospital. Um, so I did make a decision to do this 2-day course, which we both did, and it was in London. So I know that's not far from Ireland, but I'd never traveled on my own without my husband since this happened. Which I used to be hugely independent. So this was it was a diversion from my normal self, but in my head, I'm like, I'm doing this for myself. I'm going to travel. I'm going to face the fear and do it anyway. So I kind of had myself built up to maybe I was ready for phase 3 in a way too, but not in the sense of never thought I was going to get 100% better. I just thought I'm just going to make what I have work for me better, if you know what I mean.
mm,
So
mhm,
when I went to that event, yeah, I think we met early in the play and just the connection. I thought you were just such a lovely person and I connected with you and it's so interesting what you were talking about. There was no, you mean, you certainly, it wasn't a sales chat. We were just talking like person to person. And yeah, I think it was just so intrigued that I genuinely did not believe that anybody could make me better. So what I thought of when I said I'd like to work with you was I'm going to learn from this person. I like him. I think I connected with you. I was intrigued but I did not go into it with the concept that I'm going to get better here. So I kind of, and I think I probably said that to you, like, look, we'll just
yeah.
do this, coaching programs, but there's no pressure on you. I just want to enjoy it. I wanted to kind of go into the coaching space because we'd had a really, really good coaching community there. And I kind of thought, well,
Right.
here's somebody I want to work with now to elevate my own experience in terms of coaching, but I had no expectation going into it. I just thought, let's just have an engagement. Let's see where it goes. I love learning and I'm so curious. I just kind of wanted to learn what you were up to more than anything. It wasn't really about me. I felt like strange. So yeah, it's not that I went in there this mindset that you were going to make me better. I really, really did not.
Yeah. And in some ways, I think not having expectations and not knowing what you were stepping into probably benefited you, right? Of just being completely open to the experience. But I remember you saying that, like, I'm Alec, I'm here to experience your coaching, not, for to necessarily get better. I think I
Yeah.
remember saying, all right, well, we'll see what happens. Um, so let's dive into this phase 3, right? We start working together, and we worked together for a total of 3 months. And how did that journey start to unfold for you? Like what was that like?
So, yeah, I had no concept of what we were going to be doing. So I think I went in there so open to doing whatever you put in front of me, but I had no expectation or I didn't know what you were going to be doing with me at all. So I think I was surprised with some of the things that we did work on. Like for people who haven't worked with you, like the visualization that you would have done. There were elements that so in terms of getting better, I think I had put all my focus on me. I did do a lot of work on myself in terms of, who I am and my strengths and playing to my strengths again, doing things that bring me joy, getting energy so I put a huge focus on that side. So maybe like that side, I kind of figured I'd covered a lot of bases there and that had definitely helped. But
Mhm.
what you did was something I hadn't touched on, even though I did counseling. I think you worked very much on emotions. And I now can really see that emotional suppression was a huge part of, certainly a huge contributor to what was going on for me. And I did not see that even when I did counseling. I saw that as a means to understand why I was so driven and why I was so determined. And it helped me to see that. But you covered things with me that I did not realize just how much I was suppressing emotions for my entire life. Like when you open my eyes to that, it was like, oh my God, I could see it so clearly. And just to explain, like we don't have to go into huge detail, but when I was younger, I was bullied. That's something that I didn't express at the time. I still find it hard to even say it. I would have said I was teased. But as
Mm,
as a result, I didn't know this, but through the process of working with you, you put on a veneer and you go, okay, I won't let people see that there's anything wrong. I won't cry. I'll be strong. And this is when I was, 5 and 6, 7. And I can absolutely see that I carry that my whole life. So anything that happened to me that was in an emotional space, I meant to turn it into a positive. So, my father died.
mm,
Okay, he was 82. It's fine. Of course I cried, but I didn't really grieve properly at the time.
mm,
I did what, cried when the emotion kicked in during the funeral, but afterwards I went, okay, that's done now. We've had a tear,
right.
we've had the cry, and um it's good. He was 82, and that's how I dealt with everything. I put a positive twist on it. I thought this was good. I thought this was being positive, but I really
Right.
learned that. And there was lots of other things that we talked about, but I now know that that's just like suppressing emotions is just a huge energy blocker or whatever, like it was a much bigger issue. And some very simple exercises, simple but not easy exercises that you did with me from a visualization point of view that made me kind of really go back and deal with some of these things. They were like in the space of an hour, just a release that they gave me. I could feel it, and sometimes I used to be really, really tired after our sessions because it was such an emotional release. So that was something that surprised me a lot. And then the impact of you challenging me. I remember my first session, you said, is there anything that you'd like to do that you can't do now? And I said, well, I
Mm,
can't run anymore. And you said, why is that? And I said, well, it's a trigger. I used to run a lot and I loved it, but when I run now, I immediately like the next day. I've tried it a few times. You said, okay, well, look, we'll come back to that. And then I said, I don't want to run because that's the old me. I used to talk about the
mhm.
old me and the new me. And I was like, that's the old me. And I don't want to go back down that road. And you said, okay, that's fine. Let's park it. And then after 2 weeks with us working together, like 2 sessions later, I bought a pair of runners and I said, yeah, I think I'm ready to give this a shot because my brain was already starting to just release something, and see that there could be a link there between what my brain was thinking and what was actually real. So I kind of granted you permission to give me that push to do something that I wasn't comfortable to do, and then
Yeah.
things began to really change quickly.
Those those 2 examples I think are so important because the first one with the emotions, it provides this new perspective to see like, "Oh, gosh, when I repress emotions, then I'm using a ton of energy to keep this stuff down and stay positive, and okay, the cycle can make sense of collapse and coming back." And I think that piece is really important to start to see like, oh yeah, maybe my emotional state play a role in my energy and how I've been feeling. And then the second one of, as we talked about the role the brain plays in symptom creation, especially with chronic fatigue or other chronic symptoms, being able to say, oh, this activity like running, maybe it is a conditioned response that my brain has learned as opposed to something that is saying, well, I have this fatigue that sets in when I run, so therefore I can't do it again. It's like, oh, maybe I can
Yes.
actually retrain my brain to be able to do this.
Yeah.
um, and these
Uh,
two pillars I think are so important.
Yeah. So I might give the example and look, it made total sense to me. Like my brain. was trying to tell me something for years and years and years, and I didn't listen. So I went, okay, we'll just unplug her. We'll plug her out. Like, that's how I feel it
Yeah.
works. Or I feel like it just plugged me out, and for very good reason, because I was working at 110% my entire life. So those sums don't add up. Um, but then the problem was, I needed the rest, probably needed a full year of rest. Absolutely. I can see that. My entire life had been going, going, going. And then the brain just stayed at that supervigilant state. And that's where the problem, and obviously that's how we worked together. But just for one example, the running example, and I'm not saying that everybody should be running after chronic fatigue, but it was something that I did really enjoy. So the first day I went out, so I hadn't ran there in years and years, and I tried, but it always just ended up badly the next day. Like, I'm so tired. So first time you had said to me, okay, you might notice your brain trying to protect you. So it'll send you little signals like you might get a bit of pain somewhere, but just an easy way to tell if it's real or fake is if you distract your brain, does it go away? So that was your instruction. So you smiling, for example, would distract your brain, or lovely views would distract your brain. So I went out for this run, started running. I had intended to just run for 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes in, and my hip started giving out a little bit, and could feel a little niggle on my right side. So I said, okay, okay. And I'd normally stop there now. So I started just smiling to myself. So anyone that was passing me thought, oh, this one's crazy. So I was smiling to myself, and it went away. It went away immediately. So
Mm.
I kept going. It was a really lovely day, and I was running by the sea. So I had loads of, felt like I had a lot of energy. Kept going, and then further down the way, it was in a different place. I got a pain in I think it was my left knee. And I started going, okay, is that real? This could be real now, because I'm running now for maybe 15, 16 minutes. So maybe this one's real. Um, so I started just looking out at the sea, and just to see, and like straight away, distraction is gone. So I kept running. I think I
Mhm.
ran 25 minutes that first day. And then I just said I'd stop, because I didn't want to overdo it, but I could have kept going. But it was just, I couldn't believe. And then the next day, the recovery was perfect. I wasn't wrecked or tired like I was expecting to be.
Yeah.
So that was, and I did similar things with other scenarios, like quick family events. Halfway through the day, like immediately feeling tired. And I said to myself, okay, hang on, brain. You've had 8 hours sleep. You're not doing anything strenuous. You haven't done anything strenuous today. Let's just see how today goes. I literally was sitting at the kitchen table talking to myself in my head, and it just went away. And I actually even, it sounds silly, but I drove home, which was just, an hour and a half drive, instead of my husband driving in the dark. I said, look, I'll do it.
Mm.
That you can have a drink. Whereas normally I would have insisted
Mm.
he drive, because I would be too tired, and I would have had myself all built up about it. So yeah, I found myself talking to my brain all the time, and just actually, I think I told you that I got this appreciation for my brain. I think
Mm.
it was a real turning point, just to go, my brain is trying to protect me, and that's it's fabulous. Like, that's what its function is. So trying to be more aware of when it is actually trying to protect you, listen, but then question it as well. And just that lovely balance of have respect for your brain, and your body, just having respect for yourself, your brain and your body, and the function that it gives you in life. So yeah, it's
Right.
just, yeah.
Yeah. I love that example, and I think it shows a beautiful contrast of, like, pushing through, like, pre-chronic fatigue,
Mhm.
Edel, and what you had learned on this journey because, what you didn't do is say, "Oh, shut up, brain, we're fine, like, I'm gonna keep going and white knuckle and push through." It was like,
Yeah.
you took leadership over your brain, saying, "Actually,
Mhm.
I know that this has provided symptoms in the past. This is something we've needed to worry about in the past. We're operating under this new model. We're okay. We're safe.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep going."
Yeah.
And it's so empowering, like the way in which you describe this whole process unfolding. How empowering is it to be able to say to your brain, "Hey, we're okay," to distract your brain and then have symptoms in your knee or your hip go away, as opposed to this idea of, "Oh, there must be something wrong here. I need to back off." Something, and then basically you have a completely different experience, right? So
Mm.
that empowerment that leadership that you took over your brain, your body, your mind, I think is a really beautiful testament to how you recovered so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Trying to think of some of the other, I mean, the other ones we talked about, the big things that I think have become second nature now is the boundaries that really came up, that people pleasing piece and just saying yes to everything. And at that stage, I knew that was an issue, but I found it so difficult to actually address it, and just say
Yeah.
no. So that really helped. You really helped up from that point of view, which is a huge part of just that control over your own energy and understanding and being. I think part of it was self-compassion as well. You kind of, really a lot of the work that you did was really about self-compassion, seeing yourself differently. And like I
Right.
probably it's like maybe a byproduct. I don't know if this is what other people get out of it, but like my self-confidence after our work
Mm.
together just took, because I didn't realize just what a dip it had taken after chronic fatigue, because like I always would have had, not in my looks, but in my self-worth, I always had huge self-confidence in terms of my ability, my intelligence, my those type of things. And then
Mhm.
suddenly I couldn't trust myself to, like, if I said I was going to do something, I couldn't trust myself to be able to do it anymore. So the things that I was always so confident about, like I always felt I was confident internally, and now that's
Mm.
just gone. And I'd taken a nosedive in terms of confidence. And I didn't associate, like I probably had a lot of hang-ups in terms of looks and body image, and I didn't think that was related. I thought they were two separate confidence levels or
Mm.
something. And you did
Mhm.
work with me on, just indirectly, I guess, really on my own confidence around my own looks and body shape and all of that. And I had one, like, some of the biggest impact was from that, because
Mhm.
of course it influences your own confidence. So this kind of
Of
self-acceptance,
course.
as opposed to needing to be the best or the best looking or the best, and this idea of just self-compassion and self-acceptance, it just helped me so much. And what's funny is, like, I haven't changed really physically since then, but I look in the mirror at
Right.
myself differently. I know this sounds terrible. It doesn't sound terrible, but you don't hear people saying this. I see a beautiful person now when I look in the mirror. I
Mm.
absolutely never could have said that. My entire life could never have said that before.
Mhm.
And what that does for your confidence. And I haven't changed. It's my my view of myself has changed. And even that respect for my brain and my body and my such respect for it all now. And yeah, like I cannot believe that that was done in such a short space of time. I mean, we only worked together for 3 months, and I think the impact kicked in after 3 weeks. Like a lot of this was making big changes to my life after 3 weeks. And I'm not. Um, I would be not cynical, but I would have thought like I'd be a hard person to work with sometimes. But it was such a it felt like an easy process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there's so many beautiful nuggets in what you just shared of especially this idea of, you look in the mirror, you see a beautiful person and how nothing about your body has demonstrably changed over time. It's your perception of it. And I think for
Mm.
people, I hear it time and time again who say, "Wow, this happened so much more quickly than I thought it would." Because perhaps they're operating from this place of like healing a broken bone. Like, oh, healing a broken bone takes 6 weeks, or I'm gonna change myself over time and then I'm gonna be okay with how I am. And what you're able to do is just see through the illusion of it. And that can happen so quickly. Like the
Yes.
illusion of, oh, pain in my body 100% of the time means there's something wrong with my body. Like seeing through that illusion. Oh, maybe this is can be my brain. Seeing through the illusion that, oh, I can't influence my state or my energy levels. Seeing through that illusion and how quickly things can change. And so I think what you just said there in the last couple of minutes just encapsulates this journey perfectly of what we're up to. We're not trying to, create, a perfect Edel and, all of these things. It's basically seeing through the illusions that we all have that unconsciously direct our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just that fear, like facing the fears. I think a lot of people are some of the work that we did around, just some of that emotional things that maybe I did need to deal with, some things that, had happened in my life that I hadn't dealt with. I would have, even in counseling, I probably didn't bring some of that up because of fear of having to deal with it. The fear, we fear our emotions, like the fear of the emotion. And I get to reassure people, like what you did, covering some big things in maybe one or two like sessions together was so effective, because I think people think that they have to kind of go back over things, and they're terrified to go to counseling because they think this is going to be digging and digging and digging and digging and digging. Whereas I think what you proved is you can kind of just open people's mind to let go, just release, or let go of some of this emotion. And it doesn't have to, you don't, it doesn't have to be a huge long process, but you do have to be in the room to do it, So
Yeah.
that's something that I had no idea. Well, first of all, I had no idea that that was even required or that I needed it, but I absolutely did. But it's not as arduous as people might think with you, because I think you're so, I mean, I just think you have a way of kind of getting to people, getting inside people's hearts or whatever. So that's a big piece. And the last thing I think was, I know I'm just thinking out loud here, but one other thing that I think you really made me realize was that the fear of failure was like a huge thing for me, which was causing me to just push beyond my, well, like what I was capable of as well. And, doing things for the wrong reason, I think,
Mm.
is fear of failure and letting go of that. And you did an exercise with me once where I had to say, I failed, I failed, I failed. And I remember
Yeah.
having this visceral
Right.
response in my body when I said it. I curled up like I was like, I couldn't do it. And I had no idea what a big grip that had on me. And a lot of the things that I was doing, even for joy, like running, there was always
Mm.
this kind of baked in fear that I wouldn't be good enough. And it's just changed my perspective so much to let some of that go, that doing things for the sake of joy or for, for self-development, but being curious about things as opposed to setting yourself these crazy high expectations all the time. And that's been a big piece of it as well, just letting that go. Like even just to say letting that go is huge for somebody, that has had chronic fatigue.
Yeah. It's like letting that go. One of the other realizations that you had just from the notes that I was looking at before this call of like, it's safe to stop. Like
Yeah.
it's safe to stop. And um, like really pausing and asking yourself, like, does this feel right? Like, is this aligned with what I want, or is this like a pattern that's driving the show?
Yeah.
Um, I think what your recovery represents in so many ways is it's not just the physical transformation that you've had, but it's really these deeper insights and awarenesses that have um, blossomed into this physical recovery. It feels like a lot of pieces clicked into place.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just being open to it and not having any expectations maybe helped, because I felt like I just went in there with an open mind, and it
Yeah.
did so much more than I expected. Like I would definitely say like I'm 100% now, and beyond that, because I feel like I'm a different person in a good way. Like I still have retained all of my all positives of myself, but I just see myself just being much more self-compassion, less self-critical, more,
Yeah.
just appreciative of myself. Like it was like a journey that I had to go on. And even the chronic fatigue thing, I was angry about that for a long time. And I think now
Mm.
I suddenly kind of gone, hang on, it's actually been a gift. Yes, there was some years there that were very, very tough. But what it's given me at the end of it, I think outweighs the negative, because I've learned so much and kind of come out of it as a different version of myself, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
so it's important too.
That piece is so important because I think if we were to ask Adele when she was in it, like in those tough years, like, hey, is this worth it? You probably would have said, like, no way. Like this sucks. Why would anybody want this? But being on the other side, recognizing that the things you've learned about yourself, the awareness that you've built that maybe would not have come had you not gone through this process. You know, if you were to go back and change anything, would you?
Yeah, I'm always worried that if it didn't happen, where would I have ended up? Like, if it didn't
Yeah.
happen, if the brain hadn't stepped in, I would be very worried of where I would have ended up. I could
Yeah.
like that kind of person who was just so hard on themselves and so driven and so determined, and where was it gonna end up? Like, I don't think it would have been good. So I am very grateful for what happened in the end because I think it's just
Yeah.
shaped how I interact with people. Like, I'm so much more open with people now. Like, I was always that bubbly, bouncy person that people liked, but now I connect to people at a different level. And,
Mm,
coaching clients, it's so much deeper because I am open to telling people I tell people anything. I don't care anymore. I don't mind being vulnerable in front of other people. And when
mm,
I open up and share some of those things, it's amazing the impact it has for others, that people feel like they can open up and share what's on, what they need to share. So that piece as well, I think, has even helped. Yeah, it's made me
mm,
better at what I do too. But as a lesson for others, like, I think that piece around when you do some of this type of work yourself, it has a knock-on effect on relationships as well. Um, yeah, I suppose that I really do, and I did want to have this conversation because I know when I was, you know, when I had chronic fatigue, I really wanted to hear from somebody who got the other side, who got to the other side.
mm.
Like, I didn't know anybody who had recovered and was kind of out the other side. And I would say, I hope I'm better now. I'm out the other side and I'm living a life that I really love. Like, so yeah, I think it's just that giving people that hope, these good stories, so that they can see,
Yeah.
well, there is the solution. There is another side to this, rather than reading all the doom and gloom that you'll see online, because as you said, that's just fueling a pattern like that you're not going to get better. So it's kind of, I hope this story can reach people so that they can see that there's another side.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
hope out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we start to wrap things up here, I'm curious, you alluded to this briefly, but the work that you do, can you talk a little bit about how the experience has led into the professional work? You know, you're coaching with high level leaders, and um, yeah, I'm curious what the experience has led you to do, both in what you've chosen and how you do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I started out on my own in 2018, I purely went into the world of strategic consultancy. I did start doing coaching and I trained up in that area, but it was very much around like high performance. And um, I did start to do some of the depth work because I had done it myself. So, kind of getting people to look at themselves and their strengths and all of that was definitely something I incorporated. But I kept the chronic fatigue thing very much hidden.
Mm,
For a long time, like until I met you and that London workshop. And looking back, why did I do it? One element, what I told myself was because I'm not fully better. How can I talk about chronic fatigue when I didn't get to the other side? Like, so I had this, that's what I was telling myself. But looking back, there was a lot of shame around chronic fatigue, and I'm dealing with these senior leaders who have their shit together, is what I felt. And I felt like, I was a failure or something because I'd had this big phase of chronic fatigue. And dealing with a lot of men and as well. And yeah, I think part of me was just, there was a shame around it. And part of me, I didn't want to be associated with chronic fatigue. I felt like, that's my I just don't want this to be my identity. So I was very kind of much like, I want to park that now and leave it there, put it in a box.
mm,
I don't want that to be my life anymore. So I definitely just blocked it away from what I was doing in work. Although it kind of got in through the coaching space in terms of helping people maybe just go a bit deeper. But yeah. And then the London thing, it felt like one of those moments where it's just this the experience itself and meeting you and what we did together then it just made me realize, hang on a minute, like so much. I've been researching energy and the brain and health and perform all of that stuff. I'm a real learner.
Mhm.
So I've been doing that since I got sick, and so much knowledge, I guess, and even just what I have learned in terms of that idea of balancing the push with the pause. It goes way beyond people who are potentially suffering from burnout or chronic fatigue. Like I feel
Right.
like my mission would be much more about moving the baseline up, because I feel like we've, as a nation, we've accepted this kind of idea that we can all be kind of hovering around here, and burnout is just below that line, and we're all on the line here, just hovering around. We've accepted it. Like we talking about burnout, like it's just like feeling tired, but obviously it can get a lot worse than that. So I'd love to. My mission would be to move the line up, so everybody
Excellent.
is experiencing life at a different level with more energy and more joy and vibrancy. So yeah, I've kind of been really woken up to that now, and just taken all the lessons and learnings that I've had over the last number of years, and trying to help people to get that kind of control back of their lives, moving from busy into this space where they just have more control and intention over what they're doing. So that's kind of where I've taken it, and that's in the context of working with individual leaders, and hopefully then teams and workshops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just a little message. This was my reminder to myself the first when I went back to work. I don't know, can you see that it's a little pause symbol, and
Mhm.
that was a little post-it. I'd stick that up on my computer just to remind me to just pause, because instead of this go, 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 go. And then as I was coaching clients, they were coming on the calls to me like wired, talking absolutely mile a minute
Mm.
and telling me how busy their week was. So I started taking up the little post-it, and I just like take it. I told them what it meant, and I just like showed them like this. It wasn't framed at the time. And then I
Mm.
just tell them like, let's just pause for a second.
Yeah.
And the word really started resonating with them. So the word pause, although obviously it's not, I didn't develop the word, but it's a word that really sat with people. And then they'd start to say it back to me, or anytime that I felt like they were going, the brain was getting very fast, I just hold up the little post-it and they'd laugh and slow down. And so the word itself, I could see it was starting to resonate with people. So that's kind of where the word came from. And then I just started pulling all the learnings in under that umbrella. But I think it's a powerful word for all of us to kind of, even just to say the word pause in itself,
Mm.
has a calming effect.
It does.
So yeah, it's the word I want to give to the world. Hopefully that'll be my legacy, is to just to pause more and kind of think about, what does matter and where we're spending our time. And it doesn't mean that you can't show up and work, but you show up more intentionally and you're actually a better leader for it. So
Yeah.
that is hopefully my gift to the world after all of this. And you've been a big part to help me get there, Alec.
Mm.
So
Thank you. And thank you just for sharing your story. And one, I think coming full circle, the idea of pausing, right? Like when you were in your recovery was like, oh, I need to pause because if I don't, something bad's gonna happen. I'm gonna crash and burn.
yeah.
And now pausing is like I don't want to use the word performance enhancer, but it's like it kind of is. It's a performance enhancer, but it's also just a way of like you feel good when you do it. Like why
Mhm.
wouldn't you do it? It's something that can
Mhm.
help you just feel better overall, not from a
Mhm.
place of, "Oh, I need to do this," but like, why wouldn't you pause?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's changed, is I like back in the
Yeah.
when I was doing my little columns with the energy expenditure on one side and the industry,
Yeah.
the energy inputs on the other. Like I used to have to write down like 45 minutes of meditation is required for this. And it was so, it didn't feel like it was a positive, it was like, I felt all of those tools were band-aids, they were requirements. Whereas now I just feel all of that piece around, and it doesn't have to be big. I'm talking about, you could
Mm.
be talking about 3-second pause just to reset your nervous system, or space to think. It doesn't mean that you have to be lying down doing meditation.
Right.
It's the concept of giving your brain and your body that, hang on, checking in with yourself a little bit more, and doing what matters most in the moment, whether that's what you prioritize in work or what you prioritize in life. It doesn't matter. It's just that intention, intention, intention. And yeah, but it's a big shift. And it's just, just being a bit kinder to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing I want to ask is, can you tell us a little bit about the book that is coming out that I know you've been working away on?
Yeah, so it's around the concept of pause, and a little bit is telling my story and kind of going into that a little bit, and then just suppose the kind of idea of going into a bit more detail in terms of you know how that things might need to change. Some of those signals, they were basically the things that I was ignoring, and not just health wise, things that we all have a little bit of that kind of idea of being too busy. That's a big part of it. Like the title is I'm not stressed, I'm just busy.
Mm,
Because when they were taking me away in the ambulance, the lady that put me on the ambulance, the first responder, she just said to me as she was taking me away, she put her hand on mine, she goes, "Are you very stressed?" With genuine like concern. And
yeah.
I said back straight away, "No, I'm not stressed. I'm just busy. I'm just busy." And that was my line for every consultant that I ever went, because people kept saying to me, "Are you stressed?" And I kept saying, "No, I'm just busy. I'm just busy." And pause to me is the antidote to busy. It's just trying to change that mindset from trying to fit 100 things into your day to prioritizing the things that matter most, and personally and professionally. And the book is about that. It's about the journey as to why you might need to take this pause, and how you might recognize that you are living a little bit, too much in that push zone. And then what can you do to actually change that? And there, I've developed a kind of methodology around pause, the pause approach, just to help people really kind of get back to themselves and connect into who they are, and live more intentionally. So it's a leadership book effectively, but it could be read by anybody. And
Mm,
the messages, there's definitely messages in there for people maybe who are feeling a bit burnt out. But the bigger picture is around this idea that we all can live a more vibrant life, and be better humans and leaders because of it. So it's
mm.
around all of that. So yeah, it's taking all that knowledge that I learned through a very hard place and putting it to good use is what I see it as. And I hope
Yeah,
it'll be
paying
well
it forward.
received. I hope it'll be well
Yeah.
received. I think from what I've heard of people, there's a craving for this type of, just a reset, and for people just to take that step back and look at
Yeah.
what matters, what really matters.
We need it, the world needs it. It's so beautiful what you've, alchemized this experience that you went through into being.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Um, very last question, if somebody wants to learn more about you, is there a website or something that you can share?
Yeah, just edeljordan.com, and you'll find me there. There's the dog. See, there always has to be a dog barking at the end of the call. Um, well, yeah, look, and if there's anybody who is genuinely in this space of chronic fatigue and they just, want that little bit of, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever, because I'm very happy to just share my story. And people have reached out to me, and I think it has been a big help just to know that there's something else there. And like, obviously, we're not doing a sales push, but like, I really would recommend working with you too. And I'm whatever stage they're at, I think you can give advice, and I think you know when to jump in and when to not. So
Mm,
it's just a phone call.
yeah. Oh, well, Edel, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing your story. I'm
Mhm.
so glad that we got to do this.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to reading the book when it comes out, and looking forward to seeing what continues to transpire on this beautiful journey that you're on.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for bringing me on this journey. And yeah, I hope this has been useful for people as well. It was a pleasure. The time
Yeah,
flew.
it did
Okay.
indeed. All right, and thanks everybody for dialing in. We will see you next time. Take care.